about homes of writers. He notices things that others don't. He makes connections that others don't and can't. Michael McPhee, in reviewing Fred's volume of poetry called C, talks about the twin persona that dominates so much of Fred's work. And this, you'll see when you start reading these books, the way that Fred plays in a very kind of curious postmodern way with personas and the names he gives. In one series, the pseudonym of the poet is Chappell. Okay, so but McPhee is talking about this play that Fred has with naming and identities. On one side, we have, quote, old Fred, the kind of persona readers tend to remember, a character of extreme romantic temperament and habits. Old Fred is, this is not Fred, this is old Fred in the books, okay? Old Fred is feisty, he cusses, he jokes, he drinks, he misbehaves, he's cheerfully politically incorrect, he overstates and exaggerates, and he uses a motto from Catalyst, but I'm not going to try my Latin, I've already apologized to Fred, but it translates, I think, I hate, I love, or possibly I loathe her, I lust for her. There's some internet discussion as to how we're going to correctly translate this. But anyway, on the other side, this is still, I'm quoting McPhee, overshadowed by his more boisterous and attention-grabbing half is Professor Chappell. This is, again, it's not Fred, this is in the books, right? He's a neoclassical polymath of the first order. He's deeply and widely read, profoundly learned, a genuine scholar. Professor Chappell speaks quietly but precisely. He alludes frequently but never shows off. His perspective is historical across centuries, across cultures, and another Latin motto from Horace, which translates good art should appear natural, which certainly is appropriate for Fred. Now, there are a lot of people in those millions of comments about Fred on the internet, again, that make these kinds of allusions, and a lot of them are to these sort of classical folks that I've just mentioned. But there's another one, and this is from another writer who borrows Lee Smith's term, resident genius, in this book. She says that Fred is like the moon. He is constant and consistent, although he always lives up to our expectations as the resident genius. He is never the same twice in a row. He is a changeling, like Madonna. So I will see. I don't know. You get to Madonna, check the shoes out. So, Fred, we have, this is your certificate. Your name gets etched into this nice piece here by Evan Dorr, from our School of Art. And we'll give you this to take home. I think Austin has the check or either the pair of shoes. It's your choice, yeah. So, can we have Fred come up here and say just a couple of things for us? Fred Chappell.
He's hiding his shoes.
Nice shoes. Like my shoes? Then we don't have to take up a collection. Thank you, Alex. What time we got? Must be real late. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're well and happy. I wanted to say thanks to everybody for the generosity and great hospitality you've always shown me here. If I picked out everybody by name, we'd be here all night, and we don't want to do that. I'm very proud indeed to have been given the Roberts Award for Literary Inspiration. I don't know the names of the members of the inevitable committee that came to this surprising decision, but I like to think they're all women and of impeccable literary taste, Solomonic judgments, and inviolable character. But then, how would I be able to square that thought with the fact that they lit upon my name as a recipient? let us stipulate that I do not deserve the Roberts Award. There are two advantages in this proposal. First, it allows me to feel that I'm getting away something that doesn't belong to me. That's a nifty, perverse pleasure. And at my age, perverse pleasures are the most enjoyable. Second, it allows me to accept the award, not as a single person, but as an informal representative of so many other teachers of literature and literary composition in our state. If I may be permitted the latitude not to regard this honor as proceeding to an individual person, but as a member of a large, unorganized or disorganized group which believes that the task of literature is to describe our ways of understanding and misunderstanding our universe. If we can do that, then I shall feel even more greatly honored. It has long been my belief that the composition of literature and its dispersal and interpretation are all communal efforts. Sink or swim, flip, flop, or fly, we're all in it together. There are some situations where this thought doesn't apply. There are wonderful writers who step out ahead of the rest of us. There are a few writers who purposely lag behind. I think of Dr. Samuel Johnson. His achievement was to create a little elevation from which we could review prior literature. But then you have wonderful wacko contemporaries of his, like Lawrence Stern, who wrote Tristram Shandy, which I still struggle to understand. And then we have other authors that step out ahead of the rest of us to try to understand Wordsworth, Shelley, Blake, Whitman, and certain other visionaries. Their contemporaries had to readjust their bifocals, scratch their wigs, and sneeze repeatedly. Many, probably most of us, don't see the challenge of such newfangled writers as a pressing one. Even if we're not content with the current state of things, we're reluctant to spend the time, energy, and eyesight upon untried vistas. The situation must be a lonely one for those particular writers or artists, composers, mathematicians, scientists, philosophers, or forerunners. I tried to portray this set of complications in a little allegorical poem called A Last Glimpse of the Traveler. The speaker is an inhabitant of a lonely village in an indeterminate time period. He voices the sentiments of the townspeople when he addresses the visionary traveler, whose goal he cannot sight, whose mission he cannot comprehend, whose strength of determination he cannot measure. I should say also, whose page he can't find. Oh, here it is. The journeyer pauses for a moment in this small hamlet, and the speaker addresses her. A last glimpse of the traveler. With each step, divergent pathways open to the girl who strides emphatically, attempting to outpace the empery of moonlight. One way wends to the snow-dappled mountain, one way to the river where the moon stretches longwise on the water. Where, girl, do you fare as night extends?
I go to every place my journey conceives.
Why do you travel so, not knowing where?
I go to leave behind the things that I must leave. I go to seek what yet has been unsought.
There is a grove ahead, where in the shadows clutch and hold a wanderer with fearful doubt. Ravines on either side, yon so vast and black, moon cannot fetch their depth with her long spear.
So I have heard and do in part believe. Yet if I stood just here and walked no farther, all my destinies would wither, shrivel, and decay, and I would have no part in them, not even as witness. I would give over to what is already over.
We shall not go your road. We wish you well.
I think you do not. I think you are eager to forget the very sight of me in my silk dress, with my bright hair unbound upon my shoulder, and all my happiness shining in my face. Are you not cowardly? Are your hearts not withered and shrunken?
We have said what we have strength to say. Now, this is a pretty dispiriting picture of the situation, and it's not really fair to any of the parties involved. In the sequel to the poem, the villagers at a later date strike out on the trail of the lonely trekker, follow her trace to a splendid place, though they're unable to name the kind of splendor that they gaze upon. That poem remains unwritten, which has a lot of difficulties. Those thinkers who strive so far ahead of the rest of us must be lonely individuals. Almost no one's interested in what they may have to offer, and of those who are interested, only a very few are qualified to judge the nature of the offering. This means that the seekers must sometimes take themselves seriously. We accept as a given that they take their art and their missions very seriously indeed. Otherwise, they'd have no motive for their deeds. But it's a very different thing to take oneself seriously. There's a lot of the missionary, maybe a little of the Messiah in writers like Shelley, Whitman, Blake, and the others. And if they do not have a sufficient sense of self-worth, they're likely to be overwhelmed by doubts and detractors. But I know for a fact that if I allowed myself, when I sat down to work, to think, well, here's Fred, the capital P poet, getting ready to set down one or two of his immortal phrases, I would die on the spot from a mortal attack of the capital G giggles. But maybe it takes a little tiny bit of courage to admit that you lack that kind of moxie. Maybe there are advantages gained by taking the less grandiose avenues. Charm, for example. Many readers of poetry admire Milton, but few have called his epics charming, except for a few odd passages. Accidental, probably. Milton is one of those writers who make you feel you ought to put on a coat and tie and get a fresh manicure before opening the volume. This is the kind of achievement that justly demands a certain formal level of respect. That doesn't mean that his achievement is the most and loneliest, greatest. Chaucer is his equal in greatness, and I have no qualms about reading Chaucer while wearing slacks and a sports shirt. Villon I can read dressed in torn blue jeans and broken down sneakers. I seem to have a problem with shoes. He too is a great poet. Ginsberg I can read in my underwear. The grand visionaries to whom we owe so very much lack usually the power to disarm. Wordsworth is delivered as a vision of nature that's both transcendent and primordial, both personal and sublimely impersonal at once. He's done so partly by means of creating a first-person speaker whom we always respect, but feel a little presumptuous to identify with. With the members of Chaucer's crowd of speakers, I feel immediate kinship, even when I don't like someone. Has there ever been a study of self-deprecation in literature? When Emily Dickinson begins a poem by saying, "I'm nobody, who are you?" don't most of us respond almost automatically, "I'm nobody too"? Why do we do so? Well, maybe because we want to be friendly with someone who so openly makes this kind of admission. Maybe if Milton, or Shelley, or Norman Mailer, or Jim Dickey opened a piece by saying, "I'm nobody." Now that ain't never gonna happen. Abraham Lincoln could do so. Thomas Jefferson could not. Yet both are among the very best writers and orators in history. Writers are like others who desire to think and act. They have different goals of aspiration. A writer may aspire to the sublimity of Aeschylus, and there are some who could not have achieved what they have done by aspiring to lesser levels. But to me, it's acceptable to aspire to a middle ground, to try to join not a choir of angels, but a community choir of men and women who are a little less extreme in ambition and a little more accessible to camaraderie. I admire the men and women who can visualize great stones, and from those envisioned stones construct the cloud-capped towers and evergreen gardens of utopia. But I feel more personal kinship with the hay cutter who once mowed a field clean except for a single tall tuft of flowers beside a stream. Never wrote a poem, this scything man. Someone else took the pains to write it for him. Someone who was able to know what his purposeful omission meant, and in his mind held silent brotherly speech with him, saying, "Men work together."
I told him from the heart.
Whether they work together or apart. Anyhow, that's what Robert Frost says that he said, and I like to think Mr. Frost was not fibbing. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and generous Roberts Awarders. You've helped me understand and appreciate the fact that I don't work alone.